Hello and welcome back to MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things magic. Today's video we are going to unbox, reveal, discuss, and upgrade the Legends Legacy Dominaria United pre-constructed commander deck. Greetings and salutations to the MTG BC. You are the MTG Burgeoning community. Welcome back once again as we are moments away from liberating the contents of yet another pre-constructed commander deck. This time it's the Mardu build Legends Legacy. So let's begin by ripping off the seal and spilling forth the contents of what should be one of the coolest decks that we've ever done here on the channel. There's our deck box, and then we're going to slide this out. All right, that's going to go into the recycling pile. We have our awesome little push-out counters. And the even better, oh, there it is. You know how we love these dividers. You can't have enough card dividers. That bad boy comes out immediately and is slid over here. And I'm noticing that there are not... Ooh, wasn't, maybe it's in here then? There it is. Okay, so we got some more packaging. We got the deck box that is intact. That's a nice little treat because usually throughout these series it's already disintegrating in the packaging. So that's good to know. If you do use these deck boxes, well, good luck. You're going to be all right then. There is our Learn How to Play pamphlet. We have our Life Wheel, of course, and some more packaging which will be recycled. Life Wheel divider, how to play. The deck box, the sweet, sweet cards, and then the collector booster sample pack, which will be used for the greater good. All right, let's continue by liberating the deck from its oppressive plastic wrapper and reviewing the two options for the commander of this build. Of course, we have the front-facing option, which is a Planeswalker option. It is Dihada, Binder of Wills. She's going to ETB with 5 loyalty counters and can be your commander, of course. For 2 loyalty counters, you can up to 1 target legendary creature will gain Vigilance, Lifelink, and Indestructible until our next turn by placing 2 loyalty counters on Dihada. We can remove 3 loyalty counters to reveal the top 4 cards of our library and put any number of legendary cards from among them into our hand and the rest into our graveyard, and then we create a treasure token for each card put into our graveyard this way. That treasure token ability should not be one that's overlooked, because if you have any experience in trying to do exactly what Dihada's second Planeswalker loyalty ability is, and you completely whiff and see all of those cards fall into the graveyard, it's nice to get something back in the form of these peripheral treasure tokens. And lastly, for taking off 11 loyalty counters from Dihada, we will gain control of all non-land permanents until end of turn. We untap them and they gain haste. So we have quite a slew of abilities here, particularly in a build that wants to focus on the legend sub-theme. Dihada, for the purposes of this video moving forward, is going to be the primary consideration for the commander of this deck. Our secondary option here is Shanid. We're going to go with Shanid, Sleeper's Scourge. For 1 in Mardu colors, it's a 2/4 human knight with menace that gives other legendary creatures we control menace. Whenever we play a legendary land or cast a legendary spell, we draw a card and we lose 1 life. So you have to love the fact that it spreads around the Boros love with some combat enhancement, and then we splash in a little traditional draw card life loss in black. For the purposes of continuing, Shanid, Sleeper's Scourge is going to be such a better option coming out of the 99 so that we can keep Dihada in the command zone. In addition to our front-facing commander option of Dahada, Binder of Wills, and our secondary commander option of Shinid, Sleeper Scourge, both of which are two brand new additions to the Magic catalog, there are also 8 other brand new cards that are unique just to the Legends Legacy deck, and we're going to review each one of them right now. The first is Zerium, Golden Wind, a 3/4 legendary griffin with flying for 3 and 1 white mana. Whenever a griffin you control deals combat damage to a player, you get to create a 2/2 white griffin creature token with flying. This has Griffin Tribal written all over it, in addition to perhaps having some power in a Changeling deck. Unfortunately, for the purposes of this Legends Legacy build, this is the only Griffin in the 99, and it may be a good target for replacement if you so choose to do any updates or upgrades for the purposes of enhancing this pre-constructed deck. Alright, next card up is Bladewing, Deathless Tyrant, a 6/6 legendary dragon skeleton with flying and haste for 5 in Rakdos colors. When Bladewing deals combat damage to a player or a planeswalker, for each creature card in our graveyard, we create a 2/2 black zombie knight creature token with Menace. Since this is a creature-driven deck, and since we are going to look for our win conditions through combat, it just seems reasonable to try to take advantage of any potential deep graveyards that are filled with our own creatures. Bladewing, with its haste ability and its evasion with flying, does come down and can attack right away, and it will reward us with a slew of zombie knight tokens that are going to have Menace. They're 2/2 as long as we've got a nice amount of creature cards in our graveyard, which we most likely will just because of the kind of deck this is. Alright, next card up, it is Kadric, Soul Kindler, a 4/4 legendary dwarf wizard for 2 in Boros colors. The legend rule does not apply to tokens we control. Please don't make the mistake of thinking that this is going to be for all of our legendary permanents. This is just for tokens we control, and Kadric's going to take that ability a little bit further. Whenever another non-token legendary permanent enters the battlefield under our control, we may pay 1 generic mana, and if we do, we create a token that's a copy of it, it gains haste, and we sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So what this really means is with Kadric on our side of the battlefield, any one of our legendary creatures that are going to come into play, most likely it's going to be our legendary creatures because we're going to want to attack with them, we can pay that 1 generic mana to have a hasty copy of it that we can send right into combat or activate any kind of abilities that may require tapping, and then we sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. Adding a 1 mana tax to each one of these creatures if we're casting them from our hand that are legendary non-token permanents that are coming into play, that seems extraordinarily favorable with respect to Kadric's ability, and the legend rule does not apply, so we get to keep that token until we end up sacrificing it. Kadric's Soul Kindler could be a very, very sneaky good card in a Legends Matter deck. Alright, our next up, we're going to go to Artifact here, and we have Gerard's Hourglass Pendant. It has a mana value of 1, again, it's a legendary artifact. It has flash, and if a player would begin an extra turn, that player will skip that turn instead. Boy, there's nothing worse than investing 10 mana into Time Stretch just to have us tap 1 generic mana and flash Gerard's Hourglass Pendant onto the battlefield, nullifying both of those extra turns. And as an additional ability, we can pay 4 generic mana, tap Gerard's Hourglass Pendant, and exile it, and then we can return to the battlefield tapped all artifact, creature, enchantment, and land cards in our graveyard that were put there from the battlefield this turn. So with enough mana available, if we can flash this in for 1 and then pay its activated ability cost of 4, we can bring everything back to from our graveyard to our battlefield that might have been sent there by a mass removal spell that was cast by one of our opponents. Just like Kadric, Gerard's Hourglass Pendant could be another very sneaky card in this Legends Legacy build. Alright, next up we have Moira, Urborg Haunt, a 3/2 legendary spirit wizard with menace for 2 and 1 black mana. Whenever she deals combat damage to a player, we return target we return to the battlefield target creature card in our graveyard that was put there from the battlefield this turn. So there's a little bit more of some limitations and restrictions with this card versus talking about Gerard's Hourglass Pendant. This doesn't give us any ability to have flash. It has to deal combat damage. So more than anything, it seems like this is going to have some synergies with any potential self-sacrifice effects, particularly if we're gaining any peripheral benefits by doing so. And the Menace is going to be nice as a way in which to make sure that she can connect with the combat damage, which is going to be the only way that we can activate her ability and bring that card from our graveyard back onto the battlefield. All right, next up, another artifact, but this time it's an artifact creature. It's the Peregrine Dynamo, a 1/5 legendary construct with haste for 3 generic mana. We can pay 1, tap it to copy target activated or triggered ability we control from another legendary source that is not a commander. So if we shift the Peregrine Dynamo to the right a little bit to reveal Dahada, we can see that we cannot choose any of her abilities, which, let's face it, is going to be okay, because for the purposes of exploiting the Peregrine Dynamo's copying ability, we will just look to other abilities that we have. Just looking at some of the creatures we've already showcased during this portion of the video, not to mention any of the other ones lurking in the 99. The Peregrine Dynamo is another one of these cards that's going to be sneaky good in this deck. All right, our second to last new card of this build, it is Varrock Warped Sengir, a 2/2 legendary vampire with flying, death touch, and lifelink for 1 in Orzhov colors. Whenever we activate an ability that is not a mana ability, if life was paid to activate it, we may pay that much life once again. And if we do, we copy that ability and choose new targets for the copy. This could be a very potentially powerful card in the right type of build, but caution must be taken. You must examine the contents of the 99 of this pre-constructed deck to see if Varrock offers any type of synergy. I do believe, similar to what we talked about with Zerium and the lack of Griffins, you may see that Varrock will need more cards to better synergize around it, or else its place in the 99 of this build may not be as powerful. And the last new card we're going to talk about from Legends Legacy, it is the Reaver Cleaver, a legendary equipment for 2 and 1 red mana. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 and has trample, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker, we create that many treasure tokens. Its equip cost is 3 generic mana. Because combat is the lifeblood of this deck, combat is our primary win condition. Any way that we can enhance that or add any type of peripheral benefits to combat is going to be welcomed in this build with arms wide open. And here, when we strike for combat damage, if the creature doing the damage is also equipped with the Reaver Cleaver, we're going to create a lot of treasure tokens, which will help us to accelerate past our opponents and hopefully outproduce them and out-resource them on the battlefield. So in addition to the 10 brand new cards introduced by this Legends Legacy pre-constructed deck, there's also a host of reprints that we're going to quickly review. And for the purposes of clarity, we're going to separate these reprints into 2 piles. One pile is going to be a Legendary Matters pile, while the other is not. And by doing so, we're going to demonstrate just how much legend flavor is in this pre-constructed deck. Let's begin with Arvad the Cursed. We've got a 3/3 here. It's going to give other legendary creatures we control +2/+2. So we have a double Anthem effect for our legendary creatures, and it is a legend of itself. So that's going to go to the right. Bantu's Monument is here because, again, if we're casting creature spells, let's do so and make sure that we can drain some opponents and give ourselves some peripheral life gain at the same time. Felwar Stone, a fantastically welcomed reprint. Here is Garna, another legendary creature, great for some graveyard shenanigans. We'll add her to the Legend Matters pile. Generous Gift, a fantastic removal spell on white, of course. Again, Hazoret's Monument. If we're casting those creature spells, let's get some peripheral benefits by getting some more cards into our hand. Hedron Archive is going to give us some mana and some card draw. Hero's Blade is going to be a wonderfully utilized equipment in this build, because every time a legendary creature ETBs under our control, we can attach this +3/+2 equipment right to it without even paying its 4 mana to equip it. Next up, we have Hero's Downfall for some spot removal. We got the Honor Worn Shaku, which again is going to be a legendary synergy. It's going to synergize with our legendary theme. Mortify will exile target non-land permanent. I'm sorry, that's Utter End. Mortify will destroy target creature or enchantment. Again, here's another one of the monuments, because again, if we're casting those creature spells, let's get some more benefits by creating some warrior creature tokens. Soul Ring, of course. Here's our legendary sorcery. Primeval's Glorious Rebirth is going to act almost like a get every legendary card from your graveyard and put it onto your side of the battlefield, but you can only cast that if you control a legendary permanent. Urza's Ruinous Blast is the same thing as Primeval's Glorious Rebirth. You can only cast it if you have a legendary creature or planeswalker. I misspoke a little bit. A legendary land will not be enough. Has to be a legendary creature or planeswalker in order to cast your legendary sorceries, and this will exile all non-land permanents that aren't legendary. So imagine the board, imagine the effect on the board casting that will have if we have a board that's populated with legendary creatures. And I'm sorry, if we have legendary creatures, legendary anything, any kind of non-land permanents, when we're talking about Urza's Ruinous Blast. Adriana's a legend that's going to give our creatures melee. Alicia is a legend that's going to help us get some creatures out from the grave. I'm sorry, out from the out from the graveyard for power 2 or less, but you got to keep an eye on that power, because with so many of these legendary creatures that are jammed into the 99, how many of them are going to synergize with Alicia's recursive ability? Anafenza is another legendary that's going to go into our pile here. Ashling the Pilgrim could act as a board wipe, but it's also going to target our stuff as well, so you better be careful with that. So wonderful to see the Devil being reprinted here. Belborka is another legendary. Here's the Black Blade Reforged, which is another legendary permanent that's going to have synergy here. All right, we got Captain Lantern Storm. It's going to create some treasures. We got I always have trouble pronouncing this guy's name. Kothofed? Let's just say the Soul Hoarder. We got Mr. K here, the Soul Hoarder. It's a legendary. Day of Destiny is our double anthem effect, similar to Arvad. Of course, if we're going to have red in its legendary, we got to have a Tali in there. That's going to be great. Hero's Podium is going to give ourselves a personalized coat of arms effect just for our own legendary creatures. Josu Vess is going to create zombie night creature tokens with menace if you kick him when he comes into play, if you're casting him. Kari Zev, the originator of the Ragavan token, is also a legendary. Kaya's Wrath is going to wipe out the entire board of all creatures. Krenko will create some goblins, and it's also a legend. Neheb is going to give us some mana and is a legend. Odric Lunarch Marshal is going to be a headache for combat. Sword of the Chosen will give target legendary +2/+2 till end of turn. Tajik, another fantastic combat-laden beat-down creature, is also a legend. Teshar, another legend. Here we go. Taxis. That's an interesting inclusion here because it can't... The thing with Taxis, yeah, he's a 7/7 trampler for 4. He enters the battlefield tapped and doesn't untap during our turn, but whenever we cast a historic spell, we can untap him. So as you can see, we have so many historic spells in here, which, let's face it, is pretty much going to be all of our legendaries and any artifacts too. So we can send Taxis in at a pretty discounted price onto the battlefield of 4 and just make sure we have it untapped as a blocker too. 7/7, you don't want to mess with that. That's pretty darn good. Unbreakable Formation for protection. Zetalpa, another legendary. Drana we have here too. Jazal Goldmane. The Circle of Loyalty will act as an anthem effect, and whenever we cast a legendary spell, we'll create some peripheral 2/2 knights. Tenza, Godo's Maul is great if it's legendary, great if it's legendary and red because it'll get +3/+3 and trample. Wear Tear for more removal. Ambition's Cost for drawing cards. Commander Sphere, there's our Arcane Signet. Faithless Looting, Night Whisper for card draw, Thrill of Possibility for some more cards, and Read the Bones. So let's count right here our legendary non-land permanents. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31. That's a pretty high amount. So we got 31 here, in addition to the 10 we've already shown that have legendary status. That's 41 right there, and we haven't even touched our potential legendary lands. That's a pretty good mix, but I do think there is definitely room for improvement. All right, now let's take a look at the land base of Legends Legacy. We are going to start off with our basic lands. We are more plains than any other basic. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've got 6 basic plains to start things off. And then we're going to have 5 basic swamps for a total of 11. And then after that, we're also going to have 5 basic mountains. So let's see, 16 lands in our land base, our basic lands, and we're running a 3-color deck. So right off the bat, there's lots of room here in the land base for upgrades. And as a way in which to quote-unquote fetch these basic lands onto our side of the battlefield, 1 copy of Evolving Wilds and 1 copy of Terramorphic Expanse. No, there are no other fetch lands in this deck. Shocking, right? Not at all. All right, so now let's talk about lands that are going to give us any color for our spells. Of course, the best land in our format is Command Tower. Not having that would be criminal. The only other land here that can generate any one of the 3 colors needed included is Nomad Outpost, but this ETB's tapped. Surprisingly absent from this land base is Exotic Orchard. Now, I don't know exactly how common red and white are in the Commander format, but this breaks the trend of having many of the previous pre-constructed decks having a copy of Exotic Orchard in the mana base. All right, now we're going to move towards some cards that are going to give us 2 colors of mana whenever we tap them. And you know what that means, folks. We're going to play with the full complement of the Rue lands. We've got the Boros Garrison, the Rakdos Carnarium, and Orzhov Basilica. They come into play tapped, and when they do, we bounce a hand from our battlefield, from our side of the battlefield back to our hand. And each of these tap for 2 different colors. So I don't know how you feel about the Rue lands. I generally do not play with them outside of landfall bills or any kind of decks that I'm looking to get multiple landfall synergies. Here, I sense that these lands would be great to replace in addition to the Nomad Outpost, because again, we also do not have the corresponding Triome added to this land either, which would be a great replacement, which would be a great card to replace the Nomad Outpost. All right, in addition to those 3 lands that come into play tap, we also get 1 copy of each of our 3 appropriate temples, the Triumph, the Silence, and the Malice. So these are also going to come into play tapped. We get the benefit of scrying 1 when they do so, but is that enough to warrant continued use of these lands in this mana base? I'm sorry, in this land base? If it were me, I'm looking to replace those lands with the new Midnight Hunt and Crimson Vow slow lands. Because let's face it, folks, outside of the basic lands and our quote-unquote basic fetches in Terramorphic Expanse and Evolving Wilds, we showcased a Command Tower, and the next 7 lands all come into play tapped, and they give more than 1 color mana, but we want to make sure that we don't lose tempo in a deck where we're going to have to consistently be casting threats so that we can win the game via combat. So with that in mind, these 7 lands here would be the top 7 lands to replace after getting better versions of these fetch lands. They don't have to be the fetch lands, but it could be a Prismatic Vista and or a Fabled Passage as ways in which to enhance this land base. All right, next up, we're going to showcase 3 different Rakdos lands, all of which can come into play tapped or untapped based upon varying sets of circumstances. Here we have the Dragonskull Summit, which is the Rakdos check land. It'll come into play untapped if we control a swamp or a mountain. The Foreboding Ruins will give us a black or a red and will come into play untapped if we show a swamp or a mountain from our hand when we play it. And the Smoldering Marsh will come into play untapped unless we have less than, sorry, I'm saying that backwards. Smoldering Marsh will ETB tapped unless we control 2 or more basic lands. So again, these are lands that can come into play untapped, but we have to meet certain sets of criteria for doing so. Again, they are better than the previous 7 lands we showcased. Still, I think we could do better. And as we continue with lands that can tap for different colors, we're going to play with 2, not 3, just 2 of the appropriate Pain lands. We have the Orzhov Pain land in Caves of Koilos, and we have the Boros Pain land in Battlefield Forge. Curiously absent is Sulphurous Springs. This was a card that actually made it into the Dominaria United set as a reprint, but did not make it into this Legends Legacy pre-constructed deck. Am I to believe that Foreboding Ruins is a better option than Sulphurous Springs here? I don't think so, but here are the lands that we're having to deal with in this deck. 1 Caves of Koilos and 1 Battlefield Forge. And for the last couple of lands that are going to provide any colored mana, of course we have the auto-include of Bojuka Bog at ETB's tap, but that's fine because when this land does ETB, we get to exile target player's graveyard, and it does tap for 1 black mana. And lastly, and quite a surprise to see this land reprinted in a pre-constructed commander deck, we have Shizo, Death's Storehouse. It comes into play untapped, taps for a black mana. We can pay a black mana and tap this, and target legendary creature we control gains Fear until end of turn. Fear meaning it can only be blocked by black and artifact creatures. This is a fantastic deck. This is a fantastic land to synergize with all of our legendary creatures, particularly for the purpose of entering into combat, potentially unblocked. All right, and last we have 6 more lands. These are going to be some non-basic utility lands that will help us to enhance what we're doing here in this build. Reliquary Tower is going to give us no maximum hand size. We're going to tap for 1 colorless mana. I would question the relevance of having this Reliquary Tower in this deck for the purposes of synergy and gameplay, because I did not sense there were a great number of overinflated draw spells that would necessitate having this land take a spot in the land base away from a land that can produce 1 or more of the colors needed to cast our spells. Next up, we have Gyre Reach Sanitarium. Legendary land, of course, taps for a colorless, but it also taps for, we can tap 2 and tap it to have each player draw a card and then discard a card. I don't know how you feel about this card. Me, it's usually a no-go because I do not want to give my opponents any options in their hand. Even though they do have to discard a card, I still don't want them to have that choice. Which even more so I would not play with Miko Koro, Center of the Sea. Again, it's a legendary land, so it fits our legendary theme. It taps for a colorless mana, but again, we pay 2 to tap it for each player to draw a card with the option of not discarding, which is there on Gyre Reach Sanitarium. So for me, Miko Koro would be coming out. Next up, we have Mobilized District. Now, this is a land that's going to give us a colorless mana, but it also has a man-land ability of paying 4 generic mana for this to become a 3/3 citizen with vigilance until end of turn. The benefit here is this ability will cost 1 less to activate for each legendary creature and planeswalker we control. Now, you've seen the number of legendary creatures already in this build, and our commander is a legendary planeswalker. So it's very, very reasonable to think that Mobilized District will have a 0 to activate that creature ability, which could be the difference between getting those last few points of damage in to win the game. And next up, we have Tyrite Sanctum. It's going to tap for some colorless mana. It's going to tap. We can tap 2 and tap this, and target legendary creature becomes a god in addition to its other types, and we get to put a +1/+1 counter on it. And then for 4, we can tap this and sacrifice it to put an indestructible counter on target god. So this is going to give us that colorless mana. We can throw around some +1/+1 counters and maybe put on an indestructible counter if we feel the need to do so. And the last land, we're going to talk about the last card. This is number 99 of the build. It is Shivan Gorge. It is a legendary land. This one has a little bit more use than some of the other legendary lands, I think, in that you can pay 2 and a red, tap this to deal 1 damage to each opponent. Again, since we are a combat-driven deck, we're looking to find other ways to have our opponent's life totals tick down south, and if Shivan Gorge is one of those options, well, then it's going to be welcomed with arms wide open in this deck. And here are the rest of the contents of this Legends Legacy deck. We have the thick foiled etch version of Dahada, Binder of Wills. I don't see any way at all that that card will ever become curled. It's just way too thick for that to ever happen. Oh, you can't even see it there. Let's put it over here. That's better. All right, and now we're going to run through our tokens, and that's pretty much going to be it for this presentation. Lots of zombie knights because, you know, Josu and Bladewing like to make those zombie knights with menace. We've got an elephant, we've got a Ragavan, and then we flip it over. We have our treasure, another treasure, warrior, a goblin. Ooh, that goblin looks pretty sweet. We got some knights with vigilance. There's our griffins for Zerium, and a popular Magic format card. If you didn't know about those formats, you do now. And there you have it, MTG BC. The Legends Legacy pre-constructed deck from Dominaria United has been opened. It has been revealed. We have discussed it. Now let's upgrade it.
Legends Legacy is a Mardu deck that features a legendary creature build that rewards its pilot with peripheral benefits secondary to the legend subtype. Keeping this dynamic in mind, and with the front-facing commander, Dahada, Binder of Wills, as the general, the following cards are some possible upgrades to the original deck list, each of which enhances the legend theme of this build. The first upgrade to this Legends Legacy deck is Yoshimaru Ever Faithful. This on-flavor inclusion gets a +1/+1 counter on it whenever another legendary permanent enters the battlefield under your control. An early turn Yoshimaru could become a big threat mid-game. Several of the legendary creatures included in this pre-constructed deck, in addition to many of the upgrades in this video, have mana values north of 4. In order to hedge against these high-costing creature spells, let's include Thran Temporal Gateway. This artifact allows you to put any historic card into play at instant speed for just 4 mana, which can cause a lot of headaches for your opponents during combat. Piru the Volatile is a 7/7 dragon with flying and lifelink. When it dies, it deals 7 damage to each non-legendary creature. 7 damage should send most creatures to the graveyard, but none of yours because of their legendary status. As a bonus, Piru has a built-in, albeit limited, self-sacrifice trigger. Leshnorn, Grand Cenobite, provides a 4-point power and toughness swing between your and your opponent's creatures, and is an effective way to eliminate most token armies and a number of troublesome utility creatures and other commanders. Karlach, Fury of Avernus, gives you an additional combat phase, which is an imperative feature in a build that wants to win via combat. Speaking of combat, Aurelia the War Leader enters the battlefield with haste and is another enabler of additional combats, while Gisela, Blade of Gold Knight, doubles all damage dealt to opponents by any source, and prevents half of the damage dealt to you, rounded down. Let's keep driving our combat theme forward and include Akroma's Will. With Dahada on your side of the battlefield, creatures you control gain vigilance, flying, double strike, lifelink, indestructible, and protection from all colors until end of turn. If paired with any of the aforementioned additional combat effects, then you should claim victory easier than Sunday morning. Protect and enhance your legendary creatures by including a copy of Cathar's Crusade. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you get to throw around +1/+1 counters like nobody's business. Lastly, since this deck's theme is legendary, protect it with Avacyn's Memorial. It is indestructible and gives other legendary permanents you control indestructible as well. This is a great historic card to cheat into play at instant speed with the aforementioned Thran Temporal Gateway, especially when faced with a board wipe or targeted destruction to any of your legendary permanents. The Legends Legacy Precon deck showcases a Legendary Matters theme in addition to featuring some peripheral legendary payoffs. This is the first Legendary Matters pre-constructed EDH deck in Magic's history, and it leaves a lot of available design space for the purposes of narrowing the legendary theme or enhancing it. In the end, you're left with a Mardu deck that wants to win via combat, but through a legendary platform. Thank you for choosing MTG Burgeoning for your Magic the Gathering content. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video and consider becoming a subscriber. Doing so supports the channel and makes you eligible for our various subscriber rewards series. If you would like to support the channel further, then click the link to our Patreon page in the description below. There you can join our ongoing Pack Wars series as a 1-month supporter or ongoing member. Or try joining Pack Wars for free by commenting on every MTG Burgeoning video in a month. We strive to offer creative rewards through our various Patreon tiers. So if Pack Wars isn't for you, then something else will be. Links to our content and various subscriber rewards series can be found in the description below. Send us an email, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram. We are your channel for all things Magic.